Today our guest will be Chris Birch, founder of Modiphius Entertainment publishing house and game designer. Hello.
Hi.
How are you doing at Pyrkon Festival?
I'm very good. I'm really enjoying it.
Is it your first visit to Poland?
No, I actually came to a wedding between a Kiwi, New Zealanders, and Polish, and I think the competition was to see who could drink the most. So I don't think anyone won because they were still going at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Here you would have, many competitors, know.
But it's great fun.
Great to hear that we're growing bigger and bigger every year.
Yeah.
So this is good to hear and good to have you here.
Yeah.
Considering your body of work, and in 2012 you and your wife founded Modiphius Entertainment publishing house, a well-developing company that immediately gained acknowledgement. Tell me, where did the idea of founding this company come from, and why did you decide to make it happen?
It was kind of came upon us because I was a fashion designer for 13 years. Had a company called Joystick Junkies, so we made. My goal was to make video games clothing so cool that the people who hated video games had to wear it because it was the hottest thing. And we got into like boutiques and high street fashion stores, and so we kind of done that. And I was a bit bored. And when I got married, my wife Rita was saying, "Come on, you can do better." She's always inspiring me. And I started kind of thinking, well, maybe I could do something fun. I like games, and it's always been a thing I've loved. And maybe we could create a little business where I could work from home for a day a week, or it would pay for the odd holidays. So I dreamed up the idea of Cthulhu, which was our first big project that launched it. And I've just done a talk actually on kind of building IPs from zero to hero. And how that first kind of baby evolved into firstly our business and then has become one of our big projects. And it was it was a lot of hard work, and we did this first Kickstarter. We first produced just a couple of PDF adventures for the role-playing game, and they did well, but we were making $100 a month, and did pay for the odd holiday.
Speaking of Kickstarter, actually, it was the key to success. And what is the most important element while running such campaigns on Kickstarter?
Don't give up. So I would probably finish it. Well, I'd get to about 2 in the morning, and I'd gone through all the forums where I'd been posting, and I'd done all the emails and updated the site. And if you ever think you've done enough, you haven't. You have to keep going. It's that classic Winston Churchill quote, never, never, ever, 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 ever give up. So it'd be like, no, I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to keep going. And it's, a lot of people run projects thinking, I can go away for a few days in the middle, it won't matter, or I can go out to the cinema, and you can't. It is a 24-hour full-time job for the month that you run the Kickstarter, and you've got to just throw yourself at it and do everything every day and keep pushing yourself but also prepare for it. So it's there are lots of successful Kickstarters, and there's lots that just don't get there. And I'm not saying that those people didn't work hard. They do. There's a lot of other factors as well. You've got to have a great project, a great IP, have built up an audience before, but it is blood, sweat and tears.
Hard
to get
work.
there. Like most big projects are.
Yeah, so. But you're actually doing well. And you mentioned Call of Cthulhu. Are you personally a great fan of Lovecraft's work?
I'll tell you what, I grew up working in my grandfather's second-hand bookstore when I was a kid. So I'd come home, I wouldn't get paid in money. I got paid in comic books and fantasy and sci-fi novels. So I kind of grew up on a diet of Isaac Asimov and Edgar Rice Burroughs and Robert E. Howard, and books like Thongor Against the Gods and any kind of 70s, 80s science fiction fantasy I could get my hands on. So one thing I was always a fan of was kind of post-apocalyptic and ancient ruins. And I remember a friend telling me about the Mountains of Madness, about how this
great work, yeah,
exactly, this Antarctic expedition finds these vast ancient ruins high up in the mountains, and immediately my imagination was like, what if there were Nazis there? What if the Nazis found this ancient ruins? And that was actually kind of one of the first triggers for Achtung Cthulhu, because then I started reading more about Cthulhu. I've always loved things like Weird War and Sergeant Rock, this old American comic about the sergeant, and they're always finding a demon in a panther tank or Nazi zombies. And so that was like filled out my kind of passion for kind of bizarre stories in World War II, and that then combined with, you know, discovering Lovecraft. The whole idea was, well, what if you put Lovecraft into World War II? It's not just another zombie story. Yeah. It's a World War II story with this
horror itself.
Yeah, deep, horrific background, but very much driven by characters and people. I mean, in my talk just now, I was saying it's all very well having a great story, but without the actual characters, and that has to be on both sides. You can't have two-dimensional villains. You know, you've got to have three-dimensional characters that you care about being put up against the wall and having, you know, thinking all is lost, which is often the way in Lovecraft. And they've got to be facing off against three-dimensional, intelligent villains who have a plan, and you've got to figure out how to stop it.
Speaking of Achtung Cthulhu, and I'm smiling because this is worse to say, I'm smiling because of it, but actually this is also very personal to me, because I'm writing a PhD thesis on Second World War and the Nazis theme, and I'm also a great fan of Call of Cthulhu, and it was your first IP, right? Achtung Cthulhu, and was it your idea to make it, to combine it with the Cthulhu mythos, and weren't you afraid that this Nazi theme is much more overwhelming and maybe just put behind the mythos theme?
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing I think you've always got to be careful about, and right at the beginning we were aware that mixing Nazis and the mythos is dangerous ground. Yeah. So we actually had Ken Hite write a great piece for us about how, you know, the mythos is not an excuse for the Nazis. They're evil enough. They do not need Cthulhu giving them any ideas. They were bad enough. At the same time, everyone loves fighting Nazis. It's World War II is a persistent theme. And when I was first thinking about a project, I saw how popular World War II was as a game projects on Kickstarter, how popular Cthulhu was. So it was a natural thing to go, well, what if you put the two together? And then we'll use Call of Cthulhu rules, but we'll also use Savage Worlds, which are two diametrically opposed game systems. One is a pulp and action, and everyone gets to live. The other is dark, dangerous, everyone gets to die. Yeah. Excuse me. So it was, you know, that all kind of came together really nicely. But it's, you know, that sensitivity is very important. Always making sure that Cthulhu is this layer above, is using, well, I mean, in our story, the Nazis are trying to tap into the power of, you know, the Black Sun and Nyarlathotep. They're trying to free the Black Sun to bring about the, well, the arch villain is doing this. Most of the Nazis just think he's going to just give them ultimate power, but it's not the way. So throughout all that, we've got to be very careful that, you know, these people are following this plan to kind of bring about the end of the world. The rest of the Nazis are being horrible people. Yeah. Just they're not getting any help from the mythos, you know. So it is tricky, but I knew it would be a very popular subject. And as long as we made it very clear in this sort of statement at the beginning of the book, is this is what we're trying to do. And also, Ken Hite's words were very good, because he talks about how your villains can't be two-dimensional. Even when Nazis die, they scream for their mother as they're bleeding out. You know, you've got to create personality and character within your villains, so that it's more real. It's more real that people are dying, and it is a horror game at the end of the day. So it is a mature storyline.
Yeah.
But I also try and full of hope. For me, the mythos isn't we're all going to die and we don't matter. We do matter, and I think I try and always bring in real heroes. So I love World War II because it's full of stuff that you think surely that must be a film script. So there's there's various characters, like a British officer who got captured on a Japanese on a Pacific island, trained up the islanders and led a charge with his bagpipes. And he's also the character who's famous for running out of a landing ship with his sword. And he's the last recorded kill of a German of anyone with a longbow in war.
Wow.
Great character. And then you've got another guy who's a First Nations Indian pathfinder for the Americans, who killed every other German soldier in his bunk just to freak them out, so they knew that they weren't safe. And he did such incredible things that you'd be like, surely that's a movie script. But he died alone, drunk, not famous, not thanked. So we like to really try and pull out all these characters and show, look, real people did incredible heroic things, and you should remember those people, and also you can be a hero too. It really did happen. You
can be a hero.
Look how amazing humans are when they are pushed up against the wall. So,
while I was reading and playing Acton Cthulhu, of course, I had an impression that there is more Acton that actually took Cthulhu, as compared, for example, with the Darkest Hour. Have you played The Darkest Hour by Cubicle 7?
No, I haven't actually. I mean, I do. I try to be a bit careful that you don't look too closely at other people, because you don't want to be too in kind of drawn ideas, because it's a natural thing for the human being to kind of suck up ideas, and
to be inspired by.
Be inspired. But I mean, and nothing's really new. Everything we do is reinvented. Every game rule is drawn from other people's game rules. So inspiration is good. But we actually went for a slightly more historical approach. So we had this very level, and everything we do is very authentic. So we wanted to make sure the history level actually was very solid. And actually the new version, we're doing a new Acton Cthulhu this year, which uses the 2D20 rule system. We're actually dialing up the pulp a lot more. There's a lot more secret bases, there's a lot more Nazi plots, there's a lot more super science, a lot more ancient gods, a lot more kind of weird artifacts, loads more bizarre and interesting characters, because I wanted to really step it up into, I kind of think it's almost like the Avengers in World War II. It's not quite superhero, but I'm really bringing out the kind of this sort of strange characters that we have, and this awful, bizarre plot that's going on.
You did a great research, actually, as compared once again to The Darkest Hour, for example.
Sure.
So I was under great impression while I was reading it and playing it, and I'm waiting impatiently for the D20 version. And do you have, in your free time, if you have any, do you play role-play games sometimes just for fun?
Well, I do. I mean, I do. My policy is I don't work on anything that I don't love, because inevitably, if you're running your own business, you will be working on a Saturday night at 11 o'clock or 4 in the morning, at 3 in the morning on a Monday, because something is suddenly so urgent. So I always try and work on stuff that I really love. And Rita, my wife, is incredibly supportive, and she went from, and she's not a gamer, she went from just helping do whatever I couldn't do, so the customer service and the bills and things, and now she's our finance director.
It's exhausting work, actually.
It is, and she looks up. We've got 44 people in the business that we've grown from just the 2 of us. So she looks after the whole operations side. But yeah, so all the games I play are ones I love. So we're playing John Carter at the moment.
Okay.
Because that's our big release this month. It's going into stores. The John Carter of Mars role-playing game uses a kind of much more lighter version of the 2D20 system, much more elegant and easy. It's effectively a combination of your 2 attributes. So it doesn't use skills. And and of course I've got all the stuff, the books and the dice and things. So it's really fun with our group being able to play through that. But we also play other games as well. I mean, I like sometimes you come home from a day at work and your brain's mashed, you know, so we crack out Zombicide or something like that.
Yeah, it's good to relax, actually, right?
Yes.
Even with, you know, zombies or Nazis
Yes.
or anything. What actually, considering your work as a passion also, what are your biggest, greatest fears and hopes in case of role-play game future?
Well, it's very interesting. ICV2, the big industry magazine in America, showed how I think the RPG industry has grown 18% in the last year. I mean, obviously, Dungeons and Dragons has a great part to play in that. I mean, it's fantastic that the new edition has really turned things around, that they've won people back, and there's lots of people playing. There's lots of celebrities opening up to the fact that they play Dungeons and Dragons and other games. So it's a great time to be in the industry. Kickstarter is letting people create their dream role-playing game and get it out there. We help through Modiphius by helping small publishers, a bit like Free League when they first started. They just announced the Aliens role-playing game. When they first started, they were just doing a little role-playing game, Mutant Year Zero, which was a kind of prequel to Mutant Chronicles, the game that we've got. So we help people like that do their logistics, the back end, the marketing, the PR, all of the kind of hard work and boring stuff that has to go on in the back end. We get them into our distribution chain. So we help a lot of small publishers like that. They've now gone on to better things and have gone on their own way to do their own sales and distribution and pulling in big licenses like Alien. And so we help as we can to build up games, and I think the market's growing. You're seeing the quality of books have really risen, and our vow has always been to make beautiful colour books wherever we can. It's always hardbacks, and there's no excuse not to make a beautiful looking role-playing game, and then of course you want it to be a great game design and a great property, and we work obviously with a lot with licenses. There's gone are the days of, maybe in the early 90s, licensed role-playing games were often terrible, much like board games, and now generally they're very good. So we've made a business of making great licensed role-playing games, but Acton Cthulhu's coming back in a big way. We've got a new property called Dreams and Machines that
I know.
Is being launched next year. So I've had an artist working on it for 2 years. I've got some fantastic art. It's we're going to come first with some beautiful stories, like some artwork, videos. I've just been working with a Russian music producer who has just played me this track that's like, that's my world, And so we're kind of partnering to do some, we're going to use some of his music. We're going to tell some stories, some novels, and before we introduce the actual game world itself, and just get really people excited about the storyline and playing in that world. So that's actually my baby. When I'm not doing the contracts and managing everyone and kind of directing whatever we're doing with Dune or Star Trek, that's where I kind of go to work on.
Fans are waiting impatiently because of your big plans. And I have to ask you this very question. What about the plans connected with Tales from the Loop, Tales from the Flood? Because I love this system.
Sure, well that's Free League, so we still sell them on our website. But I know Tales from the Flood is coming, I believe, to distribution soon through Free League, and it will be on our website as well. And it's great looking books.
Appetite is growing, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. And since actually the Tales from the Loop here in Poland, it's less popular than any Call of Cthulhu or Dungeons and Dragons. But what do you think? What is the key element of its success? This comeback to the 80s?
Well, I think obviously it all started with Simon Stalenhag's art book. And of course, Stranger Things has made kids on bikes in the 80s a big thing.
Sentiment, sensitivity,
but also it's not that. You only have to look at the typical music festival where there's so many 80s bands are back performing, and they were naff and not so cool 10 years ago. Now suddenly it's cool to see 80s bands reappeared. There's a lot of 80s culture around. So it's when I used to work in fashion, you look at trends and how stuff starts to emerge, and it is like it's being like a sponge, and you'd have to go out there, and I would just look at catwalk shows, and I'd go to art galleries and look in shops, what are toys coming out, what's in high fashion stores, what's in streetwear stores, what's in the market stores, and you kind of absorb all this stuff. And I remember one of the last collections I did was all about hacking and codes, and we did this great t-shirt with a kid, and it looked like a Banksy piece of art, and it was a kid sitting on a CCTV camera sticking his finger up at the camera. And another piece that was, you know, like I went to see Exit Through the Gift Shop, Banks' film, and just in the back row there was a guy trying to look at his email, and all I could see was on his screen, because I was being nosy, it just said, this email cannot be downloaded by the server. So I was like, what if a t-shirt said, this image cannot be downloaded by the server, because it couldn't get a connection to download the piece of art you'd chosen. So you know, that collection was all very much inspired by just me sucking up inspiration over the course of a few months and going, this is my big vision, you know. And it's the same thing, you know, with role-playing games, how, you know, you see, I think that's how Tales from the Loop has evolved, because, you know, there is this whole movement around 80s culture. So Simon Stalahar's doing this beautiful art book. Bands are coming back. 80s fashion's cool again. Colours, etc., etc. And of course the Free League guys were in a great position, because they got to approach Simon Stahler and go, let's make a role-playing game around this book, because it tells a story. And that's often how things can just work perfectly, because it's in tune with what's happening in pop culture. Everyone's into 80s stuff. So when you see a game that's like, what, I get to play a kid in the 80s fighting robots and monsters, brilliant. And of course then there's a TV show. And the TV show was probably the biggest kind of indirect advert.
I think that's why people here in Poland, and of course I think worldwide, just know and get for this Tales from the Loop, because of Stranger Things, of course. But,
and now they're getting their own TV show for Tales from the Loop. So
great.
Yeah, from I think it's Amazon they announced, so it's exciting.
Great. So great plans to be released, and great projects, and we, your fans, are waiting impatiently to get them. Fingers crossed for your plans and projects, and enjoy Pyrkon Festival. Thank you for the interview and your time.
Thanks a lot.